Hi, I'm Brandon. Welcome to my channel, Books in the Shire. Now that it is officially October, I feel like it's time to do the end of the year book tag. I know that this is really popular book tag people do practically every year, but it's a good tag to just kind of talk about books that we're hoping to get to, books that we need to finish, and our goals for next year. The first question is, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? And I've definitely started several this year and just like put them down. I never even added them to my currently reading on Goodreads or anything like that. But there's two in particular that I would like to finish this year. The first one is Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Lost Adventures. This is just kind of a compilation of short stories. There's a ton of different stories in here. This is part of the Avatar: The Last Airbender comic universe, I think you could call it. I don't know if there's like an actual name for it. And I'm currently on page 52, so I probably read maybe 2 or 3 stories in it so far. Honestly, I'm not loving this, but I'm like a completionist and I feel like I need to read it to finish like all the Avatar stuff. I have a hard time with comics in general, so given that these are all like 10 to 15 pages each, like that's just really short and I struggle with that. And I kind of wish that the stories like wove together, but I get that it's just like little snippets here and there that you didn't see in the TV show, which I think is cool, but not my favorite. But I do want to finish it just because I'm a completionist. The other book that I want to finish this year is Skyward Flight. This is a collection of 3 novellas within the Skyward series. This is a hefty book. Granted, there's 3 novellas in here, but it's over 600 pages, I think. The Skyward series is all from Spence's perspective that I know of so far. I've only read the first 2 books, but they're both books are from Spence's perspective. So these short stories are from different character perspectives, which I really enjoy. The first one, I don't even remember whose perspective it's from. FM. So the first story is from FM's perspective, and I really enjoyed that. I think her and Spencer are similar, but like the clear distinction, I think, is that FM is a lot more, she feels more deeply than she lets on. And so that one focused a lot on FM and her relationship with other characters, but particularly pieces that we didn't see in Starsight, which is the second book. So I thought that was really fascinating, and I loved that you're getting to know some of the side characters, because that's also a critique I had about Skyward, is I wish you got to know side characters a bit more. But in Starsight, Spencer like goes away, so all of those characters from the first book aren't as prevalent. And I did enjoy Starsight a lot. I thought it built on the world really nicely, but I still wanted to get to know those characters from Skyward a bit more, and that this novella did that. So I'm really intrigued to read novellas 2 and 3 to get more from the world, because I really love this series. These are my first Brandon Sanderson books I've read, and honestly, I love them, so I completely understand the hype around Brandon Sanderson. So I'm excited to like keep going with all of his work, and particularly the Skyward series. The next question is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? And I have a plan to do like a horror slash spooky book reading vlog for October. So I guess I could use books from that, but I chose 3 books that I thought would be decent transitions, not because all of them are horror, but they just exude the vibes. The first book is 5 Survive by Holly Jackson. I haven't read any Holly Jackson. I do really want to read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I own it. I've owned it for years, but I'm waiting for the audiobook for my library. But this one I already have the audiobook for, so I'm like, I can read it now. So this one is, I believe, a horror book. If not, it's a mystery. I think it's horror though, because as the name kind of implies, only 5 people live, so people be dying. I don't know too much about this book other than it happens within 24 hours, I believe, or like 12 hours. It's something like just over the night. And this group of, I think, 8 or so friends go camping and 5 survive. So I'm really intrigued to read from Holly Jackson. I've never read anything by them, so I think it'll be fascinating to see kind of what the hype is. But I think that this will just be a good like spooky transition book. The other book I have is not horror or mystery or anything like that. It is a fantasy book, but I thought that the vibes would be autumnal. I don't fully know. But that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I've actually already started this book. I'm 136 pages in and I'm really enjoying it. It's so different than I expected, but it's really awesome. This book I thought would be a good, whimsical book to kind of go into spooky season, I guess. I don't know, or into autumn, or the next half of the, or next quarter of the year. Now that I've started reading it, I do think it's a bit more wintry, but I don't really care. I'm still gonna say that it's my transition book into autumn. And then the last book that I'm hoping to read to kind of transition into autumn, I don't have a physical copy of, but that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I am not really big on classics. I struggle a lot with, you know, Old English and whatnot, or translations. So I don't particularly love classics all that much. I absolutely adore Frankenstein. I read that in high school though, so couldn't tell you anything that happened in the book other than great descriptions of mountains. That's all I remember. So I really want to try and, you know, go through some classics and read them. Like I really want to read Rebecca by Daphne Maurier. That one. I want to read Rebecca. Also, I didn't know that book was like spooky until I was watching someone's vlog about it, so that could be a good transition as well. But on Dracula, you know, I really like spooky stuff. I'm not really into like macabre, I would say, but I'm very into like spooky, fun spooky, and I know Dracula's probably not fun and spooky, but I think it would be a fun book to, you know, transition into autumn, and I'm excited to read that classic since I never got to, and kind of see what it's all about. You know, I've seen so many retellings of Dracula, but I don't actually know, I've never read the source material, so I think it'll be really fun to read it and see how all of the versions of it have changed. Next question is there a new release you're still waiting for? So there are two. One is actually already out, but I have not bought it yet because I was really bad in September. I bought too many books, so I'm trying to not buy books. But the first is The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. This is the fourth book in the, well, I think it's the start of a new series, but it's a continuation of the Darker Shade of Magic series, I believe. So A Darker Shade of Magic is one of my favorite books. I gave that book 5 stars. I absolutely adore it. The series, in my opinion, kind of went downhill, but I think that's just a personal thing. I think my reading has evolved a bit, but I do want to actually keep going with this series and see what this new book is about. I mean, A Darker Shade of Magic came out maybe like 8 or so years ago, so it's been a while. So I think V.E. Schwab has, you know, grown and changed as an author, so I think it'll be really interesting to see their current take on that series that they wrote. So that book is already out, but I'm not gonna buy it soon, maybe in a month or so. I'm trying to go back on a book buying ban, but we'll see how that goes. And then the other book is Defiant by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 4th book in the Skyward series. I believe this one comes out in November. So I still need to read Cytonic, which is the 3rd book in that series. But I think I can definitely read that one before Defiant comes out, so I can read Defiant as well. I mean, this whole video is just going to be a Brando Sando, you know, fun time, me talking about the books by him I want to read. So yeah, Defiant is another new release that I'm hoping to get to. The next question is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? I'm gonna do 4 books because I couldn't choose. The first one is A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. This is the 4th and final book in the Ember and the Ashes series, and I've been reading this series within the last like month or so, so I really want to try and prioritize this one. I have a really bad habit of like reading the first or second book in the series and just not continuing. And I've read the first 3, this is the last one, so I'm like, I need to prioritize reading this one and get to it so I can be done with the series. But like I said, I've been reading the others in the series recently, and I've been really enjoying it. I'm loving the world, I'm loving the story progression, and I really enjoy the characters, so I'm excited to see how everything wraps up in this final book. Next is Air of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight a few years ago, and I enjoyed them. I just never kept going with the series. I was still figuring out my reading taste back then. And so earlier this year, probably like a month or 2 ago, I reread Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. I enjoyed them. Didn't love them as much as the first time, but I think they're just not as rereadable. But I am really excited for Air of Fire because I've heard really good things about it. People I follow on like Bookstagram talk very highly of it. And I remember when I finished Crown of Midnight the first time a few years ago, I was like, holy shit, I need to keep going. And I read maybe the first few chapters of this, but then I stopped for some reason and I was enjoying it. And then when I reread Crown of Midnight and I finished it, I was like, holy shit, I need to get to this one. So I really need to read this one, but every time my freaking hold comes in, like things just get in the way and I don't know why. It's like the universe doesn't want me to continue with this series. but I'm determined to finish it this year. The third one I'd like to try and finish this year is Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson. I said this video was going to be all about Brandon Sanderson, and it is. I love Skyward, so it makes sense that I want to keep going. And like I said, I really want to read Defiant when it comes out. I want to finish the series. I think Defiant's the last book at least. But so I need to read Cytonic before I can read Defiant. And then the last and final book that I would like to try to read before the end of the year is The Shattered City by Lisa Maxwell. This is the, I almost dropped my phone, I'm so sorry. This is the fourth and final book in the Last Magician series. There we go. And I absolutely love this series. I have issues with this series, but at the same time, I love it. And I know I've rated the books somewhat low, but, you know, upon reflection, I absolutely love the books. And I don't know what it is. I think it's the characters in the world that Lisa Maxwell has created. It's just so great. I just love it. But this is the last book, and I need to read this. And I've had it since it was released, like, last year, and I haven't gotten to it. So honestly, it's the size that's like terrifying me. The other books are long as hell too, but I don't know. This one's over 700 pages, and that kind of scares me. The second to last question is there a book you think could still shock you and become a favorite book of the year? I have a hard time with this question. I never know. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I think I'm going to love that book, and I end up don't liking it. Or I'm like, oh, I think I'll enjoy it but not love it, and then I love that book. So I have a hard time kind of gauging what I'll love and what I don't love. I think some of that is impacted by like hype on Booksta and BookTube, so I don't know. But I chose two books. The first one is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. I honestly couldn't tell you what this book is about, but I just know it sounds so fascinating, and also this is a stunning edition, so maybe that has anything to do with it. I think the thing that is so intriguing about this book to me is it's so different from what I'm used to. It follows Jin. It's very, the magic is different than what you typically see in a regular fantasy book. So I'm really fascinated by that. I'm excited to like learn more about different cultures with this. I've just seen good things online about this book. I think the synopsis sounds really intriguing. And like I said, I'm intrigued to see, you know, the different culture and, you know, particularly Jin. I don't know much about Jin other than watching Supernatural, which, don't hate me, you know, that's probably not a good, accurate representation of Jin. So I'm intrigued to read more about them in this book. So I think this one might be a 5-star read for me. And the other book that I think might be a 5-star read is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This book is so hyped everywhere. People are always talking about it, especially recently with the new release of the like updated version. I really want to get it because I think it's stunning, but I'm like, I already have this copy. I don't need that new one yet, but I just think I'm gonna really enjoy this one. I think that it's way different than what I expected when I first started hearing people talk about it. I think it's much more dystopian than fantasy, but I think it's both. I don't know. It just sounds really interesting, and I've been trying to get more into adult fantasy, so I think that this would be a good adult fantasy to like get me in. Again, like I said, I don't know if it's dystopian, sci-fi, fantasy, or all three combined. Who knows? But I think that this one will be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to understand the hype. The last and final question is, have you already started making reading plans for next year? So no, I haven't. It's only October. It's October 1st, so it's only October. So we still got 3 months basically. I don't know. I used to, I mean, I have a video on this channel from a year or so ago, from earlier this year, I guess, actually. That's like my goals for the year. I just don't think, I think goals are kind of constricting for me personally. I'm very much a mood reader, so I really struggle with like monthly TBRs. I struggle with, you know, setting goals and sticking to them in terms of reading. So I don't think I'm gonna have like any goals other than continuing to read my physical TBR and trying to prioritize that. That's probably like the only one. In terms of a number that I want to read next year, this year I put it at 40, and I've read a lot more than I typically do, and I think that's because I'm not in school anymore. So I think maybe next year I might up it to 50. I still want it to be reasonable for myself, and I think 50 is pretty decent. I've read over 50 books the past 4 years, with the exception of last year, but last year I think I got to like 46 or something, so I got pretty close. So I think that if I'm gonna do a number, it's probably gonna be about 50, but I haven't fully decided yet. We'll see once we get closer to January. That is my end of the year book tag. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in another one.